get divorced. And then you wound up in bed with the woman that you just divorced.
Next Donahue, they left their wives to marry their lovers. Now they cheat with their ex-wives.
And the sex was more exciting than it was when you were married.
Not really.
Why can't they let go of their exes even after the divorce?
I loved her.
They cheated on their wives, married their lovers. Now they cheat with their ex-wives. Next Donahue.
Wednesday at 9 on Channel 5. You're watching Channel 5.
From ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings. Sitting in tonight, Forrest, Sawyer.
Good evening. The battle for Sarajevo has grown more intense tonight. Muslim defenders have begun a new effort to break a 4-month siege. At the same time, Serb forces are throwing tanks, rockets, and artillery into the fight to capture the city. The rising level of violence and charges of atrocities have brought new calls for international intervention. But as Barry Dunsmore reports, in a wide-ranging war fueled by centuries-old ethnic hatred, the problem is knowing what intervention will work.
Bosnian Muslims buried their dead again today in Sarajevo while Serbian artillery pounded away in the background. Meantime, reports that Serbs are holding prisoners in concentration camps continue to cause a political storm in this country. Today, Senate Democrats, along with some renegade Republicans, called on the U.S. to take the lead in the United Nations to get International Red Cross access to the detention camps and for the UN to use force if necessary to get into them.
This is one of those situations that warrant, in my view, a limited military response.
Killing kids, ethnic purification. It's going to be a tough time for anybody to sleep.
For its part, the Bush administration today tried to counter the notion it was doing nothing by citing a list of new diplomatic measures it was taking at the UN and elsewhere.
Today, we have called for an emergency extraordinary meeting of the United Nations Human Rights Commission in Geneva to examine the situation in more detail.
None of the new steps being taken involves the threat of military force to back it up. The idea of using troops to stop the killing in Yugoslavia has been contemplated throughout the crisis, but no major power wants to risk its own men in what military experts, including the UN commander there, predict could be a quagmire.
It's a massive military challenge, and I would only say that when the force leaves, and leave it will have to, then I don't know what's been solved.
Recent polls show most Americans are opposed to even a modest military involvement in Yugoslavia, which may help to explain U.S. policy. Barry Dunsmore, ABC News, the State Department.
Presidential politics, the Democrats took aim at President Bush not only for his handling of the crisis in Bosnia-Herzegovina, but also for the way he has dealt with Saddam Hussein. Bill Clinton's message, the president is not doing enough. Chris Bury is with the campaign.
The economy was supposed to be the theme on the second swing of the Democrats' bus brigade, but in a question and answer session with students in East St. Louis, the focus quickly shifted.
How would you handle the situation in Yugoslavia right now?
Clinton did not pass up the opening to weigh in once more on the kind of foreign policy issue on which Republicans have painted him as weak.
History has shown us that you can't allow the mass extermination of people and just sit by and watch it happen.
Clinton called again for an immediate session of the UN Security Council and pledged his support for military force if the UN approves.
I would begin with air power against the Serbs to try to restore the basic conditions of humanity.
Clinton's policy is no different from the president's, but Senator Gore blamed the Bush administration for not moving quickly enough.
Lots of Democrats and Republicans alike in the Senate have said to Bush and Quayle, why don't you do something about this?
The Democrats also skewered the president on Saddam Hussein. Clinton suggested Bush clearly wanted Saddam to stay in power after the Gulf War, citing the administration's reluctance to enforce the UN ceasefire.
It's like any other bully. You send them mixed messages, they'll take advantage of you every time.
Today's tough talk on the use of force in foreign policy may have sounded unusual coming from the Democratic ticket, but that is exactly why they said it. Chris Bury, ABC News, Hannibal, Missouri.
As for President Bush, our latest ABC News Washington Post poll finds his popularity rating has reached a new low. Just 33% of the people approve of the job Mr. Bush is doing. That is down 5% since the beginning of July. Mr. Bush was in New York again today, trying to capture the high ground when it comes to what he calls morals and family issues. Here's ABC's Britt Hume.
Mr. Bush is a lifelong Episcopalian, but before a Knights of Columbus convention today, he told a room full of Catholics, in effect, he's one of them on the issues. His advisors think if he's ever to climb out of the hole he's in with the public, it will be by a systematic appeal on carefully chosen issues to target groups like this.
The central issue of this election year should be, who do you trust to renew America's moral purpose? Who do you trust to fight for the ideas that will help rebuild our families and restore our fundamental values?
The president said he's earned that trust, and he ticked off the issues: welfare reform, education reform, including school prayer and school choice, meaning public money to support private schools.
My opponent won the teachers' union endorsement by saying he's unalterably opposed, those are his words, unalterably opposed to letting Catholic parents and other private school parents have a fair share of education benefits.
Finally, of course, the colossus of moral issues, abortion, which he called a tragedy. Until 12 years ago, Mr. Bush supported abortion rights, but he said he's vetoed 7 bills that would have made abortion easier and would do it again.
I'm going to stand on my conscience and let my conscience be my guide when it comes to matters of life.
Some Republican analysts think the Democratic platform in effect endorses abortion on demand, which polls show the public does not favor. They think the president should attack Bill Clinton hard on the issue. But the president, who's not comfortable talking about the subject, did not attack Clinton on it today, and his aides doubt he will. Britt Hume, ABC News, New York.
A judge in Michigan has struck down that state's 17-month-old law requiring parental consent for teenagers who want abortions. The judge says the law is too vague about what exceptions would be permitted. Anti-incumbent fever has claimed another veteran congressman, Republican Guy Vander, lost yesterday's primary in Michigan to a political newcomer. Vander has been in Congress for 26 years. In fact, he chairs the committee charged with getting Republicans elected to Congress. In a moment, new indictments of 4 Los Angeles police officers for the beating of Rodney King. On the American agenda, cutting red tape to help business stay competitive. Does it do any harm? And getting personal with the sharks.
This is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings, brought to you by Jeep.
Presenting the new Jeep. Here's the inside. Here's the outside. The bottom. The top. Here it is by itself. Here it is with its competition.
What if you could get the fiber you need for regularity in a crisp, delicious wafer? Well, now you can. Metamucil wafers. All the effectiveness of Metamucil, and it tastes like a cookie. Metamucil wafers.
Fixodent Fresh. The spring water fresh feeling is reason enough to try it. And it's the strongest holding adhesive, so you'll never settle for anything less. Crisp freshness. Strongest hold. 2 great reasons to Fixodent and forget it.
In Los Angeles, the 4 police officers who were tried and acquitted of beating Rodney King will go back on trial. A federal grand jury today indicted the officers on charges they violated King's civil rights. If convicted, each could be sentenced to 10 years in prison and fined $250,000. ABC's Gary Shepard is in Los Angeles.
In announcing the indictments, the U.S. Attorney said the federal investigation has produced plenty of evidence the 4 officers violated King's civil rights, even though they have already been acquitted in a state court.
That evidence has been analyzed and evaluated, and the unanimous conclusion is that the evidence amply supports the charges that are reflected in the indictment. 3
of the officers, Lawrence Powell, Timothy Wind, and Theodore Brasino, are charged with intentionally using unreasonable force during King's arrest. The 4th, Sergeant Stacy Kuhn, their supervisor, is accused of failing to take action to stop the beating. Officer Lawrence Powell says he intends to plead not guilty.
I can't believe that they're doing this again to me, and I still stand by the fact that I didn't do anything wrong. I just did what I was supposed to do in that sort of situation.
In L.A.'s black community, people hope the legal system will work this time.
It's supposed to be a higher court,
So hopefully that we will see justice done.
After all, they in my mind, they're guilty, and they shouldn't get away scot-free.
Because so many people were surprised by the officer's acquittal back in April, this new federal case will be closely watched. If they are acquitted once again, many blacks may conclude white policemen can commit crimes against them and get away with it. Gary Shepard, ABC News, Los Angeles.
NASA has given up on its main experiment aboard the Space Shuttle Atlantis. The 12.5-mile cord that was designed to allow the astronauts to release a satellite, then reel it back in, kept on jamming. So the decision was made to pull the satellite back into the cargo bay. In Chicago tomorrow, an example of a new healthcare problem that's making a lot of older Americans very angry. One of America's biggest truck makers, Navistar International, will ask a federal court to let it cut the health benefits of its retired employees. Retiree health benefits used to be off limits, but now they are a target for a growing number of companies. Here's ABC's Tom Foreman.
Take it, huh?
68-year-old Joe Valenti has a pacemaker. He takes heart medicine every day. He has long worried about his health, but he has never worried about being able to afford health care because he has received free health insurance as a retirement benefit. Until now.
What a feeling to go to bed at night thinking you got insurance, waking up you don't have it.
Like Valenti, 40,000 workers who retired from International Harvester and their dependents are facing increases of $300 to $3,000 a year in health insurance cost. Navistar International, as Harvester is now known, is trying to cut retiree health benefits to save $90 million a year. The company says without the cuts, it will go out of business. Analysts say it is a dramatic example of a growing trend among financially strapped companies.
Every cost is subject to review, every budget is subject to review, and as healthcare continues to take a larger and larger share, it's being looked at more and more closely.
According to one survey, 2 out of every 3 companies in America have either cut health care benefits for retirees in recent years or plan to in the near future. Advocates for the elderly are crying foul.
They're not in a position to adjust, and essentially you're changing the rules of the game on them after they've already made a commitment.
They think by doing what they did is going to eliminate the high rising cost of health care? Bull crap.
Joe and his friends hope the court will not let Navistar break what they consider its promise to provide health insurance for life.
We're human beings. We're not just a piece of metal that you shoved aside. And I think we have a right, a basic right to health care.
But if the court approves the company's plan to cut back, even more businesses are expected to follow Navistar's lead. And the anger will spread as more retirees across the nation feel the sting. Tom Foreman, ABC News, Des Plaines, Illinois.
Still on the economy, the Federal Reserve has taken another look at business conditions around the country and does not like what it sees. The new report says that since June, economic activity has been at best uneven, with a few parts of the country reporting strength, but most places showing sluggish performance. On Wall Street today, the Dow Jones Industrial Average lost 19 points to close at 33.65. Trading was active. One-time junk bond king Michael Milken, who is serving 10 years for security fraud, may now get out of jail in 7 months. A federal judge says Milken has been cooperating with prosecutors. And former President Ronald Reagan has been told he is not a suspect in the Iran-Contra investigation. Mr. Reagan's lawyer says the special prosecutor has told Mr. Reagan he is considered only a witness. When we come back, Iraq, practically drowning in oil.
So, the way I see it, with 5 machines running at full capacity, you should be putting out what? 200,000 bonbons a day?
Yeah, about that.
Now, it's very important to consider the proper safety features when dealing with... You mind if I take a few more of these?
No, go ahead.
Thanks. So, as I was saying, the right safety features are extremely important.
It seemed like the rain would never stop. I mean, I could feel the dampness in my bones. For the first time since my doctor said I had a touch of arthritis.
He had some pain, so we called the doctor, and he recommended extra-strength Tylenol.
That's right.
with all the choices for your arthritis pain. Well, I was surprised.
Well, the Tylenol worked. The pain cleared up.
A lot sooner than the weather.
Tylenol, arthritis pain relief from the name you trust.
In our universe, there was always the unknown, the unpredictable. All we can do is prepare for it.
AT&T is now installing Fast Start. It can detect a cable cut instantly, so 800 calls can get back in minutes instead of hours.
We can send flowers for any occasion, anywhere, but only if our 800 service is up and running. Our 800 service isn't just a phone line, it's a lifeline.
I miss you.
AT&T has the most reliable 800 service, period.
AT&T. Call us.
International news in South Africa today. One of the biggest anti-government marches in the country's history. More than 60,000 supporters of the African National Congress marched through the capital, demanding that the government move faster in handing over power to the country's black majority. From Iraq tonight, a report on what was a symbol of power for that nation, oil. It's been 2 years since the United Nations imposed an embargo on oil exports in order to punish Iraq for invading Kuwait. Now, the Iraqi people do have plenty of oil, but little else. ABC's Jim Laurie is in Baghdad.
If only we could eat oil, is the Iraqi lament. It's the only thing here in abundance.
We have oil. It's not expensive. It's very cheap for us.
It is so cheap that this man fills up his car for just over the equivalent of 1 cent a gallon. Not bad for Iraq's few lucky drivers. Official figures suggest only 1 in 3 Iraqi families has a car, and so to them, a penny a gallon means very little, especially when the cost of everything else here on the market is outrageous. Because UN sanctions make it so difficult to import anything, the prices of basic goods are now between 10 and 70 times higher than they were 2 years ago. For example, a can of powdered milk sells for nearly 10 days' wages. The government provides subsidized food rations, but that and even the death penalty for merchants who speculate in prices has not helped much. And as to those car owners,
spare parts are crazily, very expensive.
A new tire, for example, goes for nearly a year's wages. So Iraqis are stuck with heavy downtown traffic, cheap gasoline, and little of anything else. Jim Laurie, ABC News, Baghdad.
At the Olympics today, a bad day for the U.S. In women's basketball. The Americans, heavily favored for the gold, won't get it. They lost to the team from the former Soviet republics. Water polo, the favored Americans also lost to the unified team. Dave Johnson nearly found himself out of the decathlon after fouling in 3 attempts at the shot put. One judge overruled that last foul and gave Johnson another shot. The American baseball team will go home empty-handed as well, and world champion Michael Johnson did not even make the finals of the 200 meters. When we come back, the American agenda, staying competitive. At what cost?
So you just got a cash advance, did you? Too bad you used an ordinary credit card, because you could be carrying some very heavy interest charges. Why not carry the Discover card? Just pay your full monthly balance and a small transaction fee, and we'll forget the interest, which means our money comes with no strings attached. It pays to Discover.
You've just poured the milk on your bowl of Kellogg's Crispix when something keeps you from it.
There we go.
Good thing Crispix has a special shape that stands up to milk. So even if you can't get to it right away, Crispix still stays crispy and great tasting.
They're still crispy.
Kellogg's Crispix, the taste that waits for you.
In the mountains of Colombia, they celebrate the richness of the land. And from this land comes the richness of Colombian coffee. That's why Maxwell House blends its coffees with Colombian beans. Rich beans, rich coffee. Some we slow roast for old-fashioned richness. Some we roast dark for the flavor of France. We buy more Colombian beans than anyone in America. Maxwell House, blended with Colombian beans. Because better beans make better coffee.
Your rugged routine, day after day. It's even harder when athlete's foot routinely comes back. Get prescription strength Lotrimin AF. It kills all causes of athlete's foot. Lotrimin AF, the finish line for athlete's foot.
On the American agenda again tonight, how Vice President Quayle gets the rules rewritten. Last night on the agenda, we illustrated how the Vice President's Council on Competitiveness, a cabinet-level panel intended to cut unnecessary red tape, has eliminated a number of tough regulations designed to clean up the environment. Well, the environment is not the only area in which the Council has had a tremendous impact. Our agenda reporter, once again, is Ned Potter.
Becky Ogle says people in wheelchairs fight a battle to find apartments with wide enough doors and no steps to block the way.
If I'm going to buy, I want to make sure that I can use every single one of the bathrooms. I want to make sure that I can get out on the balcony.
New guidelines from HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, were designed to help people like her. They said new apartment buildings must have more units designed for the disabled. But then the National Association of Home Builders, complaining about the extra construction cost, called Vice President Quayle's Council on Competitiveness. That's the agency created by the White House to reduce regulation. Soon HUD said builders could have the option of making fewer changes for wheelchairs. And in letters to the Vice President's office, the home builders said thank you. HUD would not have changed its position without the active intervention of the Council.
I think it's an injustice that Congress passes a law and then the intent and the spirit of the law is changed through the Council on Competitiveness.
The wheelchair case, say critics, illustrates the reach of Vice President Quayle's council. Its staff, working from an office next door to the White House, has virtual veto power over the regulations written by almost any department.
The cost of regulations to our economy is around $400 billion a year. Many regulations are necessary, but many are not.
Mr. Quayle declined our request for an interview, but many of his supporters in industry say they are glad the Vice President's staff is trying to cut red tape.
I think of it in terms of they're trying to keep the cost to the consumer down and they're trying to keep jobs in the U.S.
How are you?
The Quayle Council has touched on many areas, urging reduced government supervision of some daycare centers, getting the Food and Drug Administration to speed up new drug testing, and relax nutrition labeling rules. But officials say the council does more than get specific regulations changed. They say its very presence makes regulators flinch.
Share our concern about.
For example, Environmental Protection Agency Chief William Riley has lost several battles over the Clean Air Act. And senior EPA officials, who asked us not to use their names, said the effect of the Quayle Council on their day-to-day work has been devastating. One official said the council intimidates the overall process. Another said the council has a chilling effect, so much that whole areas of environmental protection are dropped because you know the council will not let them through. Mr. Quayle's supporters say bureaucrats will always be unhappy when their power is limited.
Regulatory reform is not a temporary or short-term objective. Instead, it is a guiding principle of this administration.
The impact goes far beyond Washington. State governments have to conform to the Clean Air Act, but delays and weakened regulations, some of them say, send a dangerous signal to industry.
We have a firm in New York that we have under a very tight permit with respect to the discharge of mercury into the atmosphere. The Quayle Commission's regulation would allow them to increase their release up to 200 pounds per year without notifying government. That makes no sense whatsoever.
Many of the council's efforts to cut red tape have now provoked lawsuits, and some officials say that's ironic. If rules are tied up in court, they say, companies and the public may wait years in limbo for a judge's decision. In effect, say officials, some business will face more red tape instead of less. Ned Potter, ABC News, Washington.
And when we come back, swimming with the sharks.
What's most important to you?
My wife. We've been married for 31 years.
32. Definitely these guys.
What's most important? Jack, of course.
My granddaughter, Susan. The new Ford Crown Victoria now offers anti-lock brakes with traction assist and dual airbags. Because shouldn't your car know what's important to you?
Have you driven a Ford lately?
Doctor.
Is it right for me?
Habitrol. It's a patch.
You know the patch? Habitrol. You know, Habitrol.
It's a patch. Habitrol.
Habitrol.
Habitrol Nicotine Transdermal System. Available by prescription only.
Thank you, Doctor.
It's night and day the difference Correctol makes when I'm irregular. Correctol is the gentlewoman's laxative that works predictably overnight. No wonder more women trust it. Correctol, gently, predictably, overnight.
I wear a partial, this lateral incisor.
I lost this.
If you wear partials, you know what you've lost. But here's what you've really been missing. New Polidin for partials, with the power to clean the pearly part and the metal part in just 5 minutes. So get new Polidin for partials.
What could compare to Baskin-Robbins ice cream? How about our fantabulous yogurt? Nothing tops it. Uh-oh. Did I say top it? Woohoo! Come on! Get that 30 wonderful feeling with yogurt.
Tonight on Nightline, another trial for the Rodney King policemen. They were freed once, but now it's a federal case. Can they get a fair trial? Tonight.
Finally tonight, just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water, here come the sharks again. But there's a difference. Our story tonight is not about sharks going after people. It's the other way around. Here's ABC's Ken Kashiwahara.
They actually pay to come face to face with the most feared creature of the sea. For the more experienced and the more adventurous, a steel mesh diving suit is the only protection they have. For beginners, protection comes in the form of a metal cage.
When he stuck his nose in the cage and I was nose to nose with him, yeah, that got a little tense.
Fear often turns into fascination.
The eyes are the weirdest thing. This bizarre kind of a human deadness to them, just real freaky.
Divers spend about $250 for a day with the sharks. They are warned to get out of the water when relatives of the great white appear.
Makos are bad news. Makos are very, very dangerous.
They learn that blue sharks are friendly most of the time.
When you see a blue shark, they're very long and slender, and the top part of its tail is very big.
Most divers follow instructions.
When they go by, it's okay to touch them once the teeth go past. You can reach out and touch them.
Some ignore the warnings.
Be very careful not to grab them because they do and they can turn very quickly and bite.
This new leisure activity is attracting everyone from housewives to accountants, from the curious to the daring. Greg Elliott takes them diving.
They're basically kind of bored and they want to put some excitement in their life.
I'm a psychologist, so I'm kind of doing research on myself.
I think sharks have got a really bad rep. I don't see these animals as killers.
Indeed, no one has been killed on these dives. What most find is an animal that doesn't live up to its aggressive image. As one diver put it, it's like a people zoo.
The shark comes up, looks at the people in the cage, has a good time, just like we go to the zoo or to an aquarium to see the shark.
Ken Kashiwahara, ABC News.
And that is our report on World News Tonight. I'm Forrest Sawyer. For all of us at ABC News, good night.
This has been a presentation of ABC News. More Americans get their news from ABC News than from any other source.
Wednesday, no cases too big.
They seem larger.
A lot larger.
What? Get this woman out of my life.
I've risked silicone leaking into my body and ruining my immune system. Don't you love them, Emmett?
Civil Wars, Wednesday.
Amazing Blue Star ointment stops itching fast. Jock itch, ringworm, tetter, relieves athlete's foot. Blue Star ointment, the one that's guaranteed. Ask for it.